Welcome to Office 2013 class video number 29. Hey, if you want to download this workbook, and this workbook is for videos 28 to 34, click on the link below the video or go to our class website. We're still studying Excel. This is Excel Basics number 11. The name of this video is Number Formatting and Formulas. Don't get tricked by the facade. As we've talked about a few times in this class already, number formatting is facade, and we want to talk all about number formatting in this video. We're going to talk about accounting, currency, date, time, and percentage number format, and date math and time math. None of the formulas you can do with date and time are possible unless you know about number formatting as a facade. Now let's scroll down here. You got a spreadsheet from someone. They sent it as an attachment, and you want to multiply. So you do your formula equals 1 cell to my left times 2 cells to my left. And here's why it's important to know about number formatting. You don't want to be shocked when you see this, because 9 times 100 is not 855.996. What's going on here? And if you drag this down here, you want to immediately know that if you see 2.5, it can't possibly be the result of 100 times 3%. Your number formatting as a facade radar goes off. So we want to learn a great trick, and it's called general number format. Let's highlight these numbers, and we go up to the number group and select general. This is the eraser. It erases all these other number formats that you could find here and shows you what's really in the cell. So when you have general applied, it shows you what's actually in the cell. And that's what's going on. That was number formatting. Control Z, I'm going to leave that there. Now let's come down here and do our same formula again. Equals 1 cell to my left times 2 cells to my left. Control Enter, copy it down. And instead of using the general from up here, let's highlight this whole area. And we could Control 1. It's important to know that on the number tab in the Format Cells group, general is right at the top. So we could do it that way, escape. But there's a keyboard shortcut, Control Shift grave accent tilde key. It's to the left of the number 1. So you ready? Control Shift tilde. And there we go. We can apply general formatting that way. Down here, if we have the same formula, equals 100 times 3%, no problem. We can just go to the percentage, and how about trying to increase the decimals, right? And we see that it's 2.5. All right, so here, formulas don't see the number formatting. Formulas see the underlying number. Now we want to go and talk about each one of the different number formattings, accounting and currency. Now, we actually applied accounting and currency in the last video, but let's do it here. Control 1, and we can apply accounting, 2 decimals, and you can choose whichever currency you want. The default for your computer comes from your regional settings. I'm going to keep it as $1 and 2 decimals. Click OK. Now, just as we did last video, let's highlight the middle numbers, Control 1, and remove the $sign, none. So that's accounting. Now let's go look at, and I'm going to close this the ribbon tab here, Control F1, just so we can see both. Highlight Control 1, currency. Now currency is great because you can choose the decimals, the symbol that you want, and you can choose your different negative numbers. So I'm going to select that first one. Click OK. And so the differences between accounting and currency. For accounting, there's a fixed $sign. That means it's always on the outside left. Fixed. It's nice and neat. Accountants like to be nice and neat. The currency, it's floating. It's always floating with the number. So the bigger the number, the further it is out to the left. The next thing is, negative numbers in accounting are parentheses. Negative numbers, well, you get to choose in currency. Zeros in accounting are dashes. Zeros in currency are zeros. And finally, sometimes you'll get all of the decimals lined up perfectly in accounting. But sometimes if you were to apply Control 1, a different negative number format to currency, you could get your decimals skewed slightly. Accounting fixed. Negative numbers have parentheses. Zeros or dashes, always going to be lined up perfectly. Floating dollar sign. Negatives have, well, whatever you want. Zeros are zeros, and sometimes you can get skewed decimals with currency. All right, now we got to go talk about date number formatting. Now let's click in D51 and remind ourselves about number formatting and decimals. So I'm going to enter any number here, turn the ribbons back on, Control F1, and decrease the decimals. Now with numbers like this, I can see the 50. I can then look up to the formula bar, and I can see all of the decimals there that are just hiding. Number formatting is displaying a 50, but we know that this number is actually in the cell. Let's try that with dates. If I click on 10/30/2013, there it is in the cell. Ooh, up in the formula bar, it shows the same thing. But that's not really what's in the cell. And there's going to be a shocker. There's something called a serial number. And the first date in Excel history is January 1st, 1900. Second date is January 2nd, 1900. 10/30/2013 is 41,557 days since December 31st, 1899. That's not a date in Excel. The first day is 1/1/1900. Now, why did they do this? So we can do date math. That means we can take two dates and subtract them. Because there's going to be a number under them, we can take an invoice date, 9/9/2013. Notice I'm entering this month / day / 2013. Enter. And then today's date, there's a keyboard for today's date. Oh, this is great if you're doing transactional data entry in Excel. It's Control semicolon. So those look like dates. If I Control Enter, I can see the date up in the formula bar. But underneath are serial numbers. These are the number of days since December 31st, 1899. So because there's numbers underneath them, I can say equals the later date minus the earlier date. Control Enter, and it tells me 51 days. Now this kind of ability in Excel to do date math just revolutionized how you do accounts receivable and accounts payable and short-term loans and banks and all sorts of other things. Now let's prove to ourselves. Let's Control semicolon, Control Enter. I'm looking up at the formula bar. I see a date there, right? But if the general number format is a true eraser, it'll override even our inability to see what's really in the cell in the formula bar by clicking General. And sure enough, there it is. Now, it would never be required of us Excel users to enter serial numbers in instead of dates. Control Z, so that's why they did it that way. They put this date. They even made it look like that up in the formula bar, but underneath there's a number. Hey, how about a different example? So sometimes you're issuing loans, whether you're a business, issuing loans to a customer or a bank. Short-term loans, 120 days. The question is, if you issued the loan on 9/2/2013, what's the due date? That's called maturity date. That's when the loan is due. Hey, we could do date math equals the issued date plus the 120. Notice we are allowed to take a date and add any old number because there's really a number under that date. Control Enter. So 12/31/2013. That's when we should expect our loan repayment. Now birthday. You put your birthday here. And I'd like to calculate how many days you've been alive, right? But every time I open up the spreadsheet, I want it to calculate automatically. So we're going to learn about the today function. Equals today. Tab. It's an argumentless function. You can see in the screen tip there's no bold argument saying, hey, please enter me. So you simply close parentheses, Control Enter. Today it shows 10:30, but tomorrow on Halloween that's going to say 10:31. Now we're going to calculate our formula for calculating the difference between two dates. I wrote it up here. Important formula. days between dates, later date minus earlier date. So we're going to do that. Equals the later date minus the earlier date. Control Enter. Wow, 14,061 days. One thing you want to be careful is sometimes you have a start and end date, but if you want to include the start date, you have to add one to your formula. Because subtraction, it takes one number and subtracts the other. So that one's not included. Equals the later date minus the earlier date. No problem. If the first date is included, just add 1, plus 1. 76 days for that project. All right, so date number format. It's important so we can do date math. Now let's look at time. Time number format. Let's just start off by doing the shocker right here in the cell. You enter time, hour, colon, minutes, and then seconds if you want after a colon, but we don't have any seconds. Space and either AM or PM. I'm going to type AM. And watch, when I Control Enter, those little letters will pop up and become capital. 8 a.m. Well, look at that. You could see up in the formula bar, it's put in the seconds even though they're not there. Let's just go look. Apply general number format or use your keyboard Control-Shift-tilde. So there it is. Time is always a decimal between 0 and 1. I'm going to Control-Z. And here's how it works. They decided that when you enter time, they're always going to take it 8 as an integer, 12 as an integer, and compare it to 24. So when we do that division, 8 a.m. is 0.33. This means that time, actually the serial number under the time, is the proportion of 1 24-hour day. So 0.333 means I've gone 1/3 of the way through the day. That's why 12 noon or 12 p.m., 12 divided by 24 is actually 0.5, halfway through the day. 3 p.m. would be 12 plus the 3 divided by 4, which is 15 divided by 24, which comes out to 0.625. Now you can enter military time. You can just come over and type 15:00, enter, and it will understand. By the way, that's a number formatting. I format it as I type. If I come up and look at the formula bar, it says 3 p.m. But it understands. All right, so we're going to have to deal with the fact that if we enter time and start doing time math, we're going to have to deal with decimals. Here are some of the times you might see. Here are the actual numbers in the cell. Now remember, how did we get from 8, a number of hours, to a decimal? Divide by 24. So dividing by 24. That'll help us later when we try to figure out how to do formulas. All right, so we're going to do a timesheet. Wage per hour, time in, time out. And let's go ahead and calculate our total hours and gross pay. Well, first we have to enter our time. Hey, we came in at 8 a.m., so 8:00 space a.m. Enter. We didn't take lunch, but we left it 2:30 space p.m. Enter. Now, total hours worked. It's similar to the date formula. The only part that's similar is that this is going to be a bigger number. It's further through the 24-hour day than this. So bigger number minus smaller number. Further through the 24-hour day minus not as far through the 24-hour day. So the formula equals the later time minus the earlier time. We'll calculate a decimal for us. Now watch what happens if we Control Enter. It actually took the number formatting from there and applied it. Sometimes formulas do that when you have formula inputs. Now the number decimal is still in the cell. It just got the formatting from those cells. I want to see what's there, so I'm going to go up and use General or Control-Shift-tilde. That's the decimal. So notice the problem would be if you're doing payroll and you're keeping track of hours in Excel, equals the hours worked times wage per hour. That's definitely not going to give us gross pay. That person is not going to be happy. They worked a bunch of hours and only got $5.76. Let's just leave that formula there and fix this one. Obviously, it's not giving us hours as integers. I'm going to click on that cell in F2. Well, remember, how did we get to the decimal? Oh, look at that. Every time you re-enter it, it re-sucks the formula. That's why knowing Control-Shift tilde is so important. Now, how did we get to the decimal in the first place? Remember, 8 a.m., 8 divided by 24. So if we took 8 and divided by 24 to get to decimal, well, to get from decimal back up to an integer, you have to multiply. Now, you can't just times 24 because, oh, multiplication happens before subtraction according to the rules of math. So we have to force the subtraction to calculate before the multiplication by using parentheses. Now, Control Enter. Boom, there it is, 6.5 hours. And now they're much happier with that gross pay. All right, let's come down here. Let's say we want to have a homework tracker. So we started work at 8:30 space a.m. Enter. And we stop working at 11:00 a.m. Oh, I messed up, so no problem. Now when I come back in the cell, I'm going to put an extra 1 there. All right, so now we do subtraction. Equals, I'm going to be smart and do in parentheses, hey, the later time minus the earlier time, close parentheses, times 24. Now that 24, is that violating Excel's golden rule? I thought the golden rule said anytime you have numbers that change, you put them in cell references like we did here, and then refer to them in the formula with cell references. Well, do we have to put this in a cell? No way. 24 hours in a day, that's an example of a number that's not going to change anytime soon. Control Enter. Now we went off and worked, and later we came home late. We came home at 10 p.m. But we only worked till 11:15 space p.m. Is it okay to do 24 times open parentheses, later time minus earlier time? Yes, because multiplication can be done in any order. Once you do this subtraction here, in the parentheses, it can be before or after. So we get, uh-oh, there's our number formatting again. Control-Shift tilde to apply general number formatting. Now I can come down here and say equals the hours I worked at night plus the hours I worked in the morning, and there's the total hours I worked for the day. Now the beautiful thing about this is you could each day come in and change these, or copy this over, or copy the sheets over and track it that way. Now we could do this all in one formula. Notice we have parentheses times 24, parentheses times 24. So you could come down here and do this all in one cell. But I'm going to show you how you can do it with the sum function. And this sum function formula is particularly useful if you have a big table in Excel of employees' times and they have lunch, right? And so you're going to have their calculation before lunch and after lunch. And you have a huge column, and you want to be able to have one formula you can copy down. How about equal sum? Now, sum has arguments that you can separate by commas. And what we really want is we want to add the two decimal calculations, later time minus earlier time, and then add it to later time minus earlier time. Add those in the sum and then multiply the result of the sum times 24. So we simply say, hey, first later time minus earlier time. There it is in the number. I can even click that screen tip right there, and it will highlight and show me. Now I'm going to click at the end. Watch the screen tip. Now it's bold. When I type a comma, hey, it's asking for whatever other thing I want to add. And I'm simply going to go, hey, this later time minus this earlier time. I could even click on this and see, okay, so it got that. There's just two subtractions, but when they do the subtraction, the sum will just add them. That's easier than having to use the parentheses a bunch and multiplying each one times 24. So close parentheses. If I enter this and Control-Shift tilde, that's the total proportion of one 24-hour day that I've worked. F2, I can simply times 24. Control Shift tilde to get rid of that number formatting. Isn't that annoying? Oh, that's terrible. But that's why Control Shift tilde is so important. So there we have it, one cell. All right, so time. We've seen time and date and accounting and currency. Now we want to go look at percentages. Now, before we can talk about percentage number formatting, we want to talk about what a percentage is. A percentage is just how many parts out of 100. And I always think of it as, hey, how many pennies for every 100 pennies do you need to pay for like a tax or something? Oh, wait a second, I wasn't supposed to have this here. I want you to first Control Shift tilde and then delete. Or maybe when you download this, it'll be all like that. I left it there. Hey, let's talk about what a percentage is. Here's pennies. One tax is 2 pennies out of every 100. The other one, I think in Seattle, the tax rate is 9.9 pennies for every $1 or 100 pennies. And then some other tax might be 7.65 pennies for every 100. So we could create a decimal to express that. Instead of, always having to say, hey, give me 2 pennies for every 100 pennies, we simply want to take 2 divided by 100 and express it as a decimal, 0.02. If I double click and send this down, 0.099, 0.0765. So the way the history of the percentage symbol works is somewhere way back in time, and if you Wikipedia it, it's kind of cool how the evolution of percentages. But they didn't want to look at these decimals, or they used to list them as fractions, right? So instead they invented a percentage number formatting. Now, modern day percentage formatting simply takes the decimal and slides it to position and then adds the percent symbol. So for this 0.02 example, we take the decimal, zoop, zoop, slide it 2 to the right. We would end up with, and I'm going to use a lead apostrophe so this doesn't show up as a number, 2, the new decimal would be there, 00, percentage symbol. So slide it 2 to the right and add the percentage symbol. We don't have to do that though. Excel has a percentage number format. Now I'm going to create a formula here, equals one cell to my left, Control Enter, and then copy it down. Now I can simply go up to number group, drop down, and there it is, percentage, and instantly we have our percentages. It's easier to look at this sometimes than the decimals. Now let's look at some potential trouble that you can get into when you're entering percentage. So sometimes people enter the decimal first, 0.03, and then they come up, they add the percentage symbol, no problem. The big problem is when people are like, and they enter a 3. Control Enter, and they come up and they want their percentage number formatting. Boom. Well, the percentage number symbol took that 3, slid the decimal 2 places to the right, and add the percentage symbol. So you don't want to ever start with a 3. One way to get around this trouble is to simply pre-format the cells. We can highlight these 2 cells and pre-format it. Now notice it says General right now. I'm going to add percentage. Notice this drop-down doesn't show you a preview if there's nothing in the cell. Boop. Now it's pre-formatted. We can see up there. And watch this. If you type a 3, it's polite. It pops up and says, hey, I'm pre-formatted. Anytime you see that percentage symbol, that's what it means. Enter. But if you type a decimal, it will work also. Even though the percentage symbol doesn't pop up, enter. It works just fine. You could also add a percentage number format as you type. 3.55%. That 3.55, I'm not entering an integer. Right now I would be Control Enter. That's 3.55. F2, notice I'm using F2 to edit a number here. If I add the percentage symbol now, because that percentage symbol there, I'm saying format as you type. Control Enter. 3.55 did not go into the cell. If I apply General, I can see that, yes, in fact, the decimal went in there. I just didn't want to do the decimal first and then apply the number formatting. Control Z to undo that. One last potential pitfall is if you have a decimal like this, 0.025, and you come up to this button, Even the screen tip isn't polite. It's not telling you what it's going to do. Instantly, it converts your number to 3%. No, that's not what it does. Oh, that button right there is automatically programmed to show 0 decimals. Now, you can look up into the formula bar, but a lot of times people will be freaked out like, what happened to my 2.5%? Well, the decimals are just not showing, so increase the decimals. Boop, boop. All right, here's our last example for this video. Increase and decrease decimals, and we're going to be using a rate down here, but let's convert it to a percentage. I'm going to come up here, use the drop down. By the way, Control 1, if you need more than 2 places by default, you can use that button there, or of course you can use the increase decrease decimal button. So here's some gross pay. Here's our tax rate. Let's go ahead and do multiplication to calculate our tax deduction. Equals gross pay times A138. Now, A138 needs to be locked, so I'm going to hit the F4 key. That's equals one cell to my left times whatever's in A138. Control Enter and copy it down. Now let's come to the last cell. Alt equals is the keyboard shortcut for the auto sum. Control Enter. Hey, that's looking good. You completed your payroll table here. But your boss comes in, and the boss looks over your shoulder and goes, wow, that's a pretty cool keyboard shortcut, Alt equals. But hey, you got your numbers wrong. And she grabs your mouse, and she comes over here, and she types 52.73. Enter. 58.58. What I'm doing is I'm actually looking at what's on the surface of the spreadsheet and typing it into the cells. 52.59. I'm looking on the surface, typing what I see, Enter. Alt equals, and she likes that. She grabbed your mouse and typed the numbers, and she said, whoa, that's pretty cool. See, it's 163.90. That's actually what the payroll amount should be here. What's happening? You got it. Number formatting is only making it look like these are the numbers. These are the numbers we really need. But let's increase the decimals and see where the trouble is. When you're dealing with money, any extraneous decimals past the penny will cause trouble. And it won't cause any trouble if you're just looking. Just for a second, pretend this isn't here. If you're just looking at them, it's OK. But anytime you start using these numbers, and you're going to use them in subsequent formulas, then you're running into trouble. So what is the sum function doing? All of those extraneous decimals past the penny are all being added by the sum function. So what do you do? Our next video, we'll talk about the round function for exactly this problem. So if you really need to round these numbers, meaning hack off all the decimals off the penny, use the round. All right, next video we'll do round. See you then.